What's up, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Giants Collective. I'm your host for today, Anthony Rovardo of Fireside Giants, of course, joined by Chris the Entertainer and Adriana of Empire Sports Report. Once again, without Bad Dog, he's enjoying his time in sunny Central Florida, Orlando, going around all the theme parks and having a good time with his family. He will be back next week. But for today, we are under a week away from the start of the 2025 NFL Draft. Yeah, I can't believe it. Like, this whole offseason feels like it just flew by. I feel like we were doing reaction videos to free agents just a week ago, but apparently it was a month ago. Flew on by real fast. And so here we are. And so today, since we are under a week away, we want to go ahead and do some mock drafts for you all on this edition of Giants Collective. So I'm going to pull up the PFF mock draft machine in just a minute here. We're going to go through and make the selections together, take your feedback in the live chat to help us decide who we want to pick, and really just kind of collaboratively go ahead and do this for the first half of this live stream. So I'm excited to go ahead and dive in. Adriana, we'll start with you. How are you doing today, and how are you feeling now that we are under a week away from the start of the NFL Draft?
I'm excited. I feel like it's taken a long time to get here. I feel like since April 1st hit, it was like, all right, we're in the home stretch. And it feels like now it went by really quickly, but I'm at the point where I'm like, all right, let's speed it up now, because the speculations, like, I just did 2 mock drafts and I'm like doing them and I'm like, oh, I don't know how to pick. I like this guy and I like this guy. So it's, I'm ready to just see the final answers here and have it be Sunday next week and hopefully be thrilled that Abdul Carter is a Giant, and then they get a few other guys that we can be excited about. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm hoping for the same. Chris, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, man. I'm excited. It's Friday. Weekend's here. Work's over. I get to come on here, talk Giants with you guys for an hour and have a lot of fun. We'll do a few mock drafts. And as far as the draft goes, I'm just relieved it's here, man. Like, I feel like the draft for me is kind of like, for me, it's like preseason football. Like, when preseason football is getting close, you're so pumped up. You're like, football's coming back. Then you see that first preseason game and you're like, oh, now I got to wait till the regular season. The draft's the same for me. It's like, the first 2 to 3 weeks after the regular season, you're so pumped up. You're like, the offseason's here. The Giants have been horrible. I can't wait for the draft. I can't wait for free agency. And then after about 3 weeks to a month, you're like, I just needed to be here. Just get here. I want to know what the Giants are going to do. I'm sick of the speculation. I've watched all these experts give me 5 different versions of who the Giants are going to draft. Let's find out on Thursday night. So I can't wait.
Yeah, I can't wait either. I feel like we already know what's going to happen in round 1, but I feel like day 2 is where the fun begins. Although, who knows, the Giants could always surprise us as they did in 2019 and surprisingly take a quarterback with a star pass rusher available. So we'll see. But I think we know it's going to be Abdul Carter, and of course, we'll talk about that more in the mock draft. Before we get into the mock draft machine, though, I want to bring this up because I saw somebody in the chat say it, the Defenders OC, saying they won't unretire it. I think he's referring to Abdul Carter posting number 56 on social media. And there's been a lot of Giants fans saying, oh, Lawrence Taylor should let him wear 56. I think we're all in consensus here. Let's get this out of the way. It's not going to happen. Should never happen in a million years, right?
Yeah, that, but I've also heard people saying 11 because that's the number that he wears in college, and that's Phil Sims's number. But I'm like, we did it last year for Malik Neighbors, and I think that it should be like a one-time special occasion thing. I was shocked that the Giants even allowed that to happen, that I don't think this is going to be the beginning of like, let's unretire numbers for players who haven't even played a snap in the NFL yet. Like, one day at a time here, okay? Let's win some football games.
And if you're gonna unretire a number, that's the last one you're gonna unretire. You don't touch number 56. Could you imagine the pressure that would come on Abdul Carter if they unretired Lawrence Taylor's number and they gave it to him? Like, I can't even imagine what the pressure would be. But I've seen a lot of people like on Twitter like knocking Abdul Carter for, I think he's done it like 3 or 4 times, posted number 56. And they're like, oh, he thinks he's Lawrence Taylor. No, you dumbass. He doesn't think he's Lawrence Taylor. He's trying to pay homage to the New York Giants, the history of the New York Giants. Their greatest player of all time is a pass rusher he will look up to when he more than likely will be drafted by the New York Giants. So I have no issue with that. As a matter of fact, it excites me that he is embracing the history of the New York Giants.
That's what I think. Like, if you're a Giants fan and you see him tweeting this, you have to be like, I love this kid. Like, he knows enough about the Giants and the history of Lawrence Taylor and what he did for football to be like, this guy like could potentially be my mentor if I go to the Giants. And like, I'm going to have to live up to his shoes every day. It's going to be a reminder that like, I want to work hard and be a good football player for New York so I can be on par, maybe someday if he's lucky, like LT. And for the people who are like, oh, we shouldn't get him because he's an Eagles fan, isn't that enough for you to be like, oh my God, he's tweeting about Lawrence Taylor? Like, this guy gets it. Of course they want him to be a Giant. I don't give a shit that he grew up an Eagles fan.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was exactly where I was going to go with it. This should hopefully calm any Giants fans down who are like, oh no, he's a Philadelphia fan. He clearly is excited about the possibility of being a New York Giant. I think most Giants fans are excited about the possibility as well. But I guess it's a good time to transition. We'll go ahead and dive right into the mock draft. Let me share my screen. And bada boom, bada bing. There we are with the mock draft machine. I figure we'll go 3 rounds. Sit in Joe Shane's chair. Now, I know it presents you with the trade first and foremost. I know Giants fans would love to see a mock trade up to number 1 overall. I think that dream is unfortunately dead. So are we in consensus here? We just go ahead and start?
Yeah. I was of the belief at one point that Tennessee was going to look to trade out of that pick, but it seems like they're dead set on taking Cam Ward at this point. So I think it's safe to have him penciled into that first pick.
I agree. Yeah. All right. So as expected, Cam Ward and Travis Hunter off the board here. So I figure Abdul Carter, are we all good with that? Or do we have any advocacy for Shedeur Sanders?
No, it's I thought, like I said, I thought Shedeur for a while. I think it's clear as day. And I think this will be the pick, but it's either going to be him or Hunter. But I think it'll play out exactly like this mock did. And I think Abdul Carter will be our first pick for the New York Giants.
Yeah, I'd rather try and trade back into the first for Shedeur than pick him at 3. Like, I just, in no world am I not taking Abdul Carter over Shedeur Sanders. It's just not happening.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. If you saw, I slowed it down the mock draft machine so that way we can track here. If Shedeur Sanders does start to slip, maybe we get a little creative and try and trade up. But I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion. It's going to be Abdul Carter with the number 3 pick. So let's go with that. So let's see.
It's like the easiest year to mock. This is like the easiest year to mock for the Giants, I feel. Like at the end of the
we just went to the Jets at 7.
Yeah. Yep. Shedeur at 7 to the Jets. See, that's one I don't think makes sense. Like, a lot of people say that the Jets are in the quarterback market. I really don't feel like they are.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't think they are. They don't have the same pressures a team like the Giants does, for example, to draft a quarterback. First year GM, first year head coach. They signed Justin Fields. I agree with you. I don't think they feel the pressure to have to take a quarterback.
Yeah,
I agree. I think the Raiders at 6 are more likely because, I mean, Geno, yes, they signed him, but they could always do a Kirk Cousins and Falcons situation since Geno is 35. One thing I have to point out before we go and have our discussion on round 2, Amari and Hampton going to the Detroit Lions. This mock draft machine must be drunk.
Yeah, I don't think that. Yeah, no chance.
Yeah.
But anyway, what are you guys thinking about?
They love running backs, but they have enough already. That's not happening.
They got 2 of the best in the game.
Yeah.
What are you guys thinking in round 2? Because, I think that's really where the fun begins for the New York Giants. Like, we know pretty much what's going to happen in round 1, but I feel like it's wide open for them in round 2. They could go in a myriad of different directions.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking like DL or OL there, but I love Benjamin Morrison. He is a guy that I loved watching at Notre Dame. And, especially after hearing someone like Joe Shane say that, he's thinking ahead in 3 years from now, all 3 of our starting corners are going to be at the end of their contracts and Dexter Lawrence. I love the idea of taking a guy like Benjamin Morrison here. It brings maybe a little competition for Tay Banks. Plus, if you're not getting Travis Hunter at 2, then I think to add another corner into the mix is a good idea. I also like Josh Connerly. That would be another guy that I would go after here, obviously knowing that we could use some help on the offensive line. Like, if God forbid Andrew Thomas goes down, in no world do I want to see James Hudson or James Forsyth out. No, James Hudson and Stone Forsyth out there to be in the right tackle if they move Illuminor to left tackle. Like, I don't want to see that. I'm going to feel awful watching that.
Yeah. For me, round 2 is always really hard to predict because you don't we could do these mocks all day, but nobody saw Xavier McKinney dropping when he did to the second round when we got him. Nobody thought Azeez Ojulari was going to fall as far back as he did in that draft when we ended up getting him. A lot of people thought it'd be a first round pick that year. So there's going to be 1 or 2 players that most people aren't predicting that are going to fall the second round who will. Maybe it will be Hampton, who the Giants brought in for a top 30 visit. It could be. I'm not ruling that out. He's certainly a guy I'd be interested in. But for me, without, accounting for some insane surprise here, unless it's a quarterback, which I'm not ruling out. I don't think they're going that route. I don't think they should go that route. But I'm not ruling it out, right? People have talked about the guy at the top of that list, Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart. People have brought those guys up as a possibility here. I don't think they'll do that. I think they're going D tackle here. So I want you to pull up that list. That's the strength of this draft. It's a massive need for the New York Giants. I think it's just a perfect example of where it meets, best available player or near best available player meets need for the New York Giants here. I think I would go.
I like Darius Alexander out of that list.
I was him, and I actually like TJ Sanders too. But I think one of those two players in this scenario would be the pick. I think they'd go D tackle here. Whoever's their best available player at that position. There's a plethora of guys that could fall to this spot at that position because it's enriched with. We've talked about it before on here. I think what's his name? Jeremiah said 25, if I'm not mistaken, of the top 50 prospects are interior defensive linemen. So I just feel like it's the strength of the class. It's a massive need. That's really where I think we're going here with this pick.
Yeah. You can still get a really good one there too.
Yeah.
There's some really good defensive tackles on this board. Tyleik Williams is my favorite of the bunch. That's like a personal favorite of mine in this draft. I don't know if you two are familiar with him out of Ohio State, but man, he is like a sick athlete and he can plug the run. I feel like he's the perfect guy because he's got some pass rushing upside, but I feel like the Giants really need a good run defender next to their Dexter Lawrence. I really do like Tyleik Williams, but I think of the guys that we've mentioned, Darius Alexander, since he had the top 30 visit with the New York Giants, probably does make the most sense. Yeah. We know that they like to take their top 30 guys, but I'm also going to just throw this idea out there to you both. Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State. So this was recent. I think maybe yesterday the news came out that the Giants had a top 30 visit with him. And I did some research on Donovan Jackson. He's a left guard, but he's listed as a tackle because he finished out his 2024 season at left tackle because of injuries on the Ohio State offensive line. I think that this might be an option for the Giants. Some mock drafts have him going round 1, others early round 2. Knowing that the Giants visited with him, I wonder if they're viewing Donovan Jackson as a potential player who could maybe plug in and play guard from day one, but also be the backup that we've desperately needed behind Andrew Thomas. Would either of you give consideration to that? Maybe going offensive line here at pick number 34, especially because, Chris, I know you mentioned this is a very strong defensive tackle class. Maybe you can afford to wait until 65 and still get a really good talent there. Maybe going offensive line early rather than later.
I'm not against that. Option. I am always a big proponent of drafting offensive linemen in every draft. So I'm certainly not against that. We know that, you could look at this roster right now. Outside of Andrew Thomas, we don't have a long-term answer at the tackle spot. I know Illuminor played relatively well, and Giants fans love him, but he's not, I wouldn't consider him, at least not yet, a long-term answer. We could use more depth at that position. He's got some tackle guard versatility. Yeah, I think I would not be upset at all if the Giants went. I just don't think they will. I'm leaning they'll go D-tackle, but I'm not ruling that out either. I would probably say that's the second most likely position they would take here if it's not D-tackle. I think they would go offensive line.
Yeah, I agree. I think, it all depends on who's on the board. Like, I do think if someone like Omarion Hampton was on the board that they would go after him. Yeah. But I think that going for an offensive line or defensive lineman at 34 is probably going to be the most likely option for them. And I agree. I really like Donovan Jackson from what I saw and have read about him over the last 2 years, especially what he did moving from guard to tackle. I get the idea that if they went after someone like Donovan Jackson, like he's what they thought Izzudu would be, like that exact type where he would be the guard. He has tackle flexibility. He's actually played tackle before, unlike Joshua Izzudu before he got to.
Well, he has now too, and the pros.
Yeah, right. So I like Donovan Jackson. I think that he would be a great pick here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. If that's the pick, I'll be happy with that one. I lean towards defensive tackle. I think that's what they target here. But either way, my main takeaway is I think it's going to be trenches the first 2 rounds for the Giants, especially when you take into account the fact that last year they didn't draft a single player on the offensive or defensive line in those 7 rounds, which was a little bit.
Yeah, they were the only team
it was crazy.
Do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The only team that didn't draft a trench player last year, and lo and behold, their trenches were a mess. So I'm assuming this year they're going to go ahead and add to the trenches.
This defense, guys, if they get, a really good defensive tackle prospect there with that pick, and you draft Abdul Carter, I know I've been leading the charge. I want a quarterback. I want a long-term answer. That's what I'm excited about. But this defense, all of a sudden, guys, I mean, there's a ton of potential. We'll see if Shane Bowen does anything with it, but a ton of potential on this defense if you had those two players in the first 2 rounds. After what we did in free agency in the secondary, I'd be really excited to watch this defense next year if we end up with those 2 players.
Me too.
Totally agreed. So before we lock in our pick, which I think is going to be one of these defensive tackles, just because Jason Johnson in the live chat here is asking, do you both think that running back is even a possibility at number 34? I know that we mentioned Amari and Hampton, and if he slides out of the first round, maybe he could be the pick at 34, but that feels like extenuating circumstances. Outside of Hampton, do you think that Joe Shane would really consider taking a running back in the second round? Because he's met with a lot of running backs this year. I think they've met with 6 or 7 total. Seems like it's a priority for them to add a running back to this backfield. Do you think that the second round, though, is too early, or should their interest indicate that maybe they're going to surprise us?
I'll say this. I think we're going to have a running back on our team by the end of day 2. I don't know if it's going to be with this pick or if it's going to be at 99 or 65, but I think by the end of day 2, there will be a running back on the New York Giants. More than likely, I think Hampton's probably the only potential running back, if he were to drop, which I don't think he will, that the Giants could take, because I think he's the type of guy most teams value as like a Jahmyr Gibbs, like a guy most people feel should be a first-round talent. But I think he would wait because it's such a deep class too. There's so many good running backs in this class. I think he waits till that 3rd round area to do it. I don't think he'll do it here unless Hampton falls. Then he thinks about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think Hampton is the exception to the rule here at 34. I don't think they would go any other running back there unless he managed to fall out of the first round, knowing that it's a deep running back class, knowing that they do have some guys on the roster that they could take a swing on someone later. I would be surprised if they picked any running back other than Hampton at 34.
Yeah, I would be too. But I do find it interesting, and the last point that I'll make before we do lock in that defensive tackle pick, if you look at the Giants' top 30 visits, the only 2 offensive linemen they've met with are Marcus Mbow and Donovan Jackson. Those are both round 2 players. If you look at their defensive tackles, though, Darius Alexander, I know PFF has him going in the 2nd, but a lot of other mocks have him in the 3rd, as well as Alfred Collins in the 3rd, and Joshua Farmer as a 3rd-round pick as well. So they've really looked at 3rd-round defensive tackles, but meanwhile, the running backs have been a little bit of a scatter between rounds 2 and 3. So I almost wonder if we can look at their top 30 visits and kind of piece together what their multiple, first 4-round draft plan really is here, is kind of how I've started to look at it. So I think that they could surprise us. I think in round 2, they could end up going running back. Potentially, I would think in a trade down so they could add additional value.
I want to shout out Ray W, by the way. Great subscriber of mine. He came in. He says, did I miss Bumper Pool? My favorite name in the history of the NFL. He was me and Bad Dog, we would mock him to the Eagles every mock draft that we did a couple of years ago. I love that name, Bumper Pool. It's fantastic. But Ray, good to see you, man.
I don't even know Bumper Pool. But all right, so what are we thinking here?
There's a reason you don't know who he is. He did get drafted, I think. Or at least he was rostered, because I remember watching a game last year that he played in.
I loved Kool-Aid last year.
Oh, fantastic.
Great name.
Fantastic name.
On the topic of good names, before we lock in this defensive tackle pick, which I feel like I've said 4 times though, but fun names. I think his name is John Tuggle, Mr. Irrelevant from 1983 that the Giants drafted. Did you guys see that he's getting a movie, a biopic made about him?
No.
Yeah. So we're getting a New York Giants movie technically coming out in the next couple of years. So it's going to be Michael Shannon starring as Bill Parcells, and it's going to be David Cornsweet, who's playing the new Superman, starring as John Tuggle, Mr. Irrelevant for the New York Giants in 1983. Yeah.
Did you see, awesome. Speaking of football, did you see Nicolas Cage is playing John Madden?
Yeah, that's pretty exciting too.
That's going to be weird. I don't know if I can see him doing the Madden voice. Nicolas Cage is playing John Madden, yeah.
Wow.
Nicolas Cage is crazy. I won't discount him being able to pull it off, but
I love him.
Yeah,
I think he's hysterical. I'm excited for it.
I think we're in for a good show there. So for this pick, though, I'm leaning Darius Alexander because I think he is a really good prospect. Plus, I think because the Giants had the top 30 visit with him, out of those guys here at the top, Omar Norman Lott, Tyleek Williams, I think Darius Alexander, since they visited with him, does make the most sense. Are we in consensus there?
Yeah, I think that's a good pick there. I think that very likely they go DT there, and he seems like he makes a lot of sense. I've seen him a little bit, but You know more than me when it comes to him, so I'll trust your judgment. I think it'll be a D tackle.
All right, let's go with Darius Alexander then, and let's simulate over to round 3.
Oh, I thought you were taking the Ohio State guy, Tyreek Williams. Either way, I think they're going D tackle.
No, yeah, Darius Alexander, because that's who they met with.
Yeah, it makes sense. Top 30 visit.
Yeah.
This is very interesting.
Yeah, the mock draft machine is a little bit funny.
Scatterboo to Seattle. Doesn't Seattle have like a ton of running backs too?
Yeah.
Oh, I like Demetrius Knight. Oh, Josiah Stewart, another guy I like.
Trayvon Henderson has another one. That was a guy I thought they could have considered the Giants.
To the Eagles, too.
Of course.
Also would have said Elijah Arroyo should be somebody that we pay attention to because the Giants have expressed quite a bit of interest in him, but he went 59. So, all right, let's see who's on the board. Quinshon Judkins, I know that they did meet with. They seem to like him.
I like him a lot. I think he's certainly a possibility here.
I like Mason Taylor if they went tight end there.
Yeah.
Mason Taylor's interesting.
I'm just out of curiosity, who's the quarterbacks still available?
They've got them all falling.
Milrow, and at this point, maybe you take a shot. I don't think he'll last this long, but so I almost don't want to mock him because I don't think he's going to get to the 3rd round. And I don't think Jackson does. But you never know with quarterbacks, right? Like everybody had Malik Willis go in like late 1st, early 2nd. He dropped to like the 4th round, in that draft. So you never know. I think this is the first time where maybe they consider going quarterback. I don't want them to this early personally. I just wanted to look at the names that were available.
When I did my mock, they had Milrow going 33 to the Browns.
That's more realistic to me. I think? I think somebody's going to reach on his athletic potential. I don't love the idea of taking him that early, but I think somebody will take him.
I would not take him that early.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. Yeah.
I think there is a chance, though, that he does fall to 65 just because he is QB4 in this draft class, right? Like it's Cam Ward's 1, Shedeur Sanders is 2, and then number 3 is Jackson Dart, seems to be the consensus. QB4 usually doesn't go in the 1st round. Like last year was an exception to the rule, of course. QB4 usually ends up going around round 2 or maybe round 3. So I don't know. I think there is a chance he falls because he's not like a ready-made quarterback prospect anyway. He probably goes earlier, but I feel like a lot of people boosted his draft stock in the media based on the fact that he accepted that NFL draft invitation. Good point. He actually just explained it that whether he goes round 1 or day 1, day 2, day 3, he plans on bringing his family and attending the draft all 3 days if that's what it takes, just because he wants to reward them basically and get the experience. That's what he said. So I kind of lost faith in this idea that he had some sort of assurance that he's going to be a round 1 or round 2 pick. I think there's a really good chance that he does end up making it later in the draft now after hearing him explain his logic.
What about running backs? We should go the running backs here.
Yeah, running back.
Judkins, that's who I'd want here. I've seen Sampson though. He's maybe I'm mistaken him. I think he's the really he's explosive, right? Sampson, like he's like a smaller, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's like I remember Jalen Hyatt propping him up. Let me see.
I think he's the speedster, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking him and Jalen Hyatt, baby.
Yeah, I think I remember. Yeah, he's kind of small, 201, but he's explosive. I've seen highlights of him. I think if they were going running back here, though, I think I'd prefer Judkins. I'm a big fan of his. Both Ohio State running backs I like a lot, but Henderson just went.
Dillon is 5'8", 200. This projects him going anywhere between the 1st and 2nd round.
Oh, wow.
First team all SEC last year, 1-year starter. Offensive player of the year and All-American, which I think they'll like. Almost 1,500 yards last year, 5.8 yards per carry, 22 touchdowns. Not bad.
Not bad at all.
What
I do like Judkins
line here too, Anthony.
Explosive plays in the open field.
I like Tate Ratledge. He's a pretty interesting player out of Georgia.
I always joke that I'll take anyone from Georgia because whatever they're doing with their football program is unbelievable. And like literally everyone manages to succeed in the NFL. So I would take him.
And it actually worked out for us when we took Andrew Thomas, right? So Not that I would mock this here, but let me ask you guys a question. Knowing how most people project the D tackle class is strong, could the Giants double up at that position? Do you think in day 2? Maybe not here, maybe at 99, maybe at 105. Do you think they could take one at 34 and one at like 99? Do you think that's a possibility?
I think they would pick 2, but I don't know if they would go that close together just because they seem to have some other needs. Like, I think in those picks is going to be running back, quarterback, offensive line, depending on what they do at 34.
Yeah, maybe wide receiver. You could sprinkle that in as a possibility there.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. No, I don't know if I'd be stunned if they did that. I'm not predicting it, but I wouldn't be shocked if they go double up on the D tackle day 3.
I could see it happening. I just think it would be day 3 though, like not 2 in day 2. I don't think it would be like 1 at 34, 1 at 99. I think once we get into like that 5th round, maybe they would go ahead and do it again. I could totally see that happening because they need depth there. Like, not only do they need a starter, but they also need some depth. So,
all right, what do you guys think? I'll let you guys. I mean, I'm leaning running back actually with this pick. To be honest with you, I just based off how many they've brought in. Of the top 30 visits, I think 7 of them have been running backs, and they all seem to, like you said, Anthony, to be right in that round 3 range for the most part. So that's where my head's at. I think they're going to go. If not this pick, I think it'll be pick 99. They're going to go running back.
Yeah, I would go. I think between 65 and 99, I would go running back and offensive lineman interchangeably.
Yeah, I like that. I will say if we want to go running back and offensive line, I think offensive line sooner rather than later might be the move, just because of how thin it is at like guard in this year's class and how deep it is at running back.
I'm completely fine with that. If you want to go Rutledge here and then we go running back at 99, I think that's. I'm just trying to be realistic because it just seems like they do value a lot of running backs in this class. So I'm expecting one on day 2 for sure. But yeah, I like the offensive line with this pick.
Yeah.
All right, should we lock in Tate?
Let's lock him in.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Judkins went the very next pick.
Yeah, I didn't think he would fold the 99. Jackson Dart I saw went. What if I haven't been keeping up with it. Did Milrow go yet? What if he ever fell to 99?
As soon as you said that, he just went. That's crazy timing.
Went to the Colts. He's going to compete with Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson. It's actually not a horrible fit, to be honest with you. He's kind of a similar, at least, skill set to Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, not bad. All right.
Let's see.
So I say we look at running back off the bat. The player that I really like is Trevor Etienne.
Did they bring? I've seen a lot of Giants fans talk about him.
I don't think they had him in for a 30 visit. They might have. I'd have to double check. Yeah, I didn't see him on that list, but I think that they met with him at the pro day.
That's what it was.
Definitely expressing some sort of interest.
Tied to the Giants. He's big, right? He's like one of the bigger, more powerful backs, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's an interesting player.
Let me see his.
He's 232 pounds. He's a big dude.
He's a big boy. Yeah.
Wow, what I have listed here says he's 5'8", 198 pounds, but he ran a 4.42 40, which is pretty good.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
That might be a different Damian Martinez. Let me see. Let me go to Damian Martinez combine results and see.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about Travis Etienne.
Oh, no. Yeah.
No.
I was going to say, yeah, Martinez is kind of like a brawler, like a Brandon Jacobs type running back. Not that he's on that level, but that type of running back.
At 217,
4.51 40.
At 230 pounds, a 4.5 40-yard dash is pretty damn good. But Trevor Etienne, I do really, really like. Like, that's my sleeper in the mid to late rounds, just because I watched a little bit of his all-22 and was like blown away. I can't believe he's not higher on draft boards, especially after his combine performance. I know you just listed out his measurables right there. I mean, he ran a blazing 40. He had a lot of explosiveness, and it really shows up if you watch Trevor Etienne. He's a player that I like a lot, but I don't think he's going to go until sometime on day 3. And I think whoever drafts him is going to get an absolute steal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that kind of what was A-Chain, right, with Miami. He was the guy that had that blazing spin, and he kind of reminds me of him with the 40 performance he had, and maybe the Giants want to get a guy like that It'd be interesting to have an explosive running back like that in the offense. So I'd be for it. I mean, anyone, but I definitely think it's going to be a running back here with this pick.
Yeah.
Do you think it could be quarterback? Because I know we've mentioned that in previous live streams, how this is kind of like a free pick, playing with house money. It's a compensatory pick. So maybe they just burned that one on the developmental guy. Like, could it be a Will Howard around here?
Yeah, and even though we're not doing it in this mock, the Giants also have a pick like 5 picks later, right? Like they're picking like 105. So they could easily go quarterback and then running back with the next pick. So, yeah, I could see that here. I think quarterback is probably going to go early day 3 or possibly very late day 2. So that could make sense with this pick as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think the quarterback that the Giants like is Kyle McCord. I really like him too. I think that he's very underrated. Yeah.
He
like more than Chuck.
The thing that scares me with Kyle McCord, and I know he had a really good statistical year this year with Syracuse, he was not good with Ohio State. And it's hard to be a quarterback in college football and not look good for the Ohio State Buckeyes with all the talent that they always possess. They had Marvin Harrison on that team, right? Didn't they? So that's what scares me a little bit about him. But for a 4th-round quarterback, and he was a really highly regarded prospect, I'm completely fine if the Giants elect to go him with this pick. I don't love Riley Leonard as a guy that cheers for Notre Dame. I'm not in love with he's like a poor man's Daniel Jones, and that's not encouraging if you're a Giants fan.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a little scary comparison there.
Yeah, that's just a poor man. Yeah.
Poor man's Daniel Jones might be the most like that might be the worst comp ever. Like if you get that comparison, I don't know how you recover from that one.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
I like Damian Martinez as the pick here to try and keep it in that top 30 visit wheelhouse and, keep that trend going. So I know they didn't have the 30 visit with him, but they did meet with him at the pro day. So I kind of like that idea if we want to lean that way.
Another guy that we didn't talk about, they could go Tyler Shuck, right? I could see that. They have a late visit with him. There's interest there. That's at least a possibility too. So not that I love it. I'm not in love with that idea, but it's a possibility.
You're right. It is a possibility, but it just might be my worst nightmares that they spent a top 100 pick on that guy. I prefer Will Howard against Tyler.
If they're going
I prefer Will Howard. I even prefer Riley Leonard over Tyler Shuck. I do not want Tyler Shuck. Like I want nothing to do with him.
Yeah. Let's lock in Martinez. I like the Martinez pick here.
Okay.
All right, me too.
We got a deep running back core now here with Tracy and him. I like it.
Yeah.
And Singletary too. Decent veteran.
Yeah.
C- for Rowledge, huh? That's interesting.
They didn't like your pick, Anthony.
Yeah, and an A. We didn't get an A+ for Abdul Carter. That's rude.
Did they give out A+? I don't even know. Do they?
I think they did because I think I got an A+ when I did mine.
Oh, did
Let's
you?
see. What did I get an A+ for? Let's see.
Jason Johnson says he'd prefer any of us 3 over Tyler Shuck at quarterback.
Well, I mean, they have him ranked as the number 2 overall prospect, and we took him at 3. So if that's not an A+, what is? I guess we couldn't get an A+ with that pick. Maybe because it's not like our biggest need, perhaps. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get it, PFF. Yeah. But regardless, I'd be happy with a draft like that. If you get Abdul Carter, I think he's a guy that's capable of transcending a defense. You look at like Nick Bosa, what he did when he went to the 49ers, Myles Garrett, what he was able to do with that Browns defense. People forget the Browns are the best defense in football 2 years ago. A dominant pass rusher like that, Aiden Hutchinson can really transform a defense. So super excited about that. You get a good defensive tackle in the second round, some offensive line depth, and a guy that could help in the backfield. So I'd be A-okay if the Giants ended up with that their first 2 days in the draft.
Yeah, me too. I think it covers off on some good needs, but also pretty much going best player available. There's no reaching, nothing like that. So I like all those picks. I think they're good additions to this team. And I just feel like, with picks 3 and 34, like if they really get Abdul Carter and they get Darius Alexander or another top defensive lineman there, like like Chris was saying earlier, how could you not be excited about our defense? Like the biggest problem that I'm going to have with our defense is Shane Bowen. Like, is he going to be able to figure it out with these guys? I mean, I hope so, but you have to think like one of the issues that they had last year was the talent. So if you're bringing in two guys like that right off the bat, plus Javon Holland and Paulson Adebo, like you got to feel good as a Giants fan looking at that defense.
I totally agree.
Top 10 defense in the league next year if they're not held back by Shane Bowen. Like I think they have all the necessary pieces, especially if we end up with the Abdul Carter at the top of this draft. Like why wouldn't you feel that way if you're? I mean, well, because the Giants always seem to disappoint us. But I mean, Dexter Lawrence, Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, Paulson Adebo, like they really improved the secondary. There's not a lot of holes in that defense. If they get a guy like Abdul Carter, linebacking core could definitely use but Abdul Carter also kind of improves the linebacking core too, right? He's a guy that you can move around, right? You could play it not full time, but you could play him in certain packages at the linebacker spot. So I would be really excited about this defense next year if we end up with Abdul Carter, and I think we're going to. I think it's pretty set in stone at this point.
Yeah.
Carter's a really good run defender. I don't think enough people talk about that. We talk about his pass rushing prowess, but he's a really good run defender too. So I really like this mock draft, but everybody in the live chat, drop your own grade, whether you agree with the B that PFF gave us, whether you think we should be higher or lower, let us know. Send your feedback down below in the live chat. Before we move on over to the chat and have a discussion with you all, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one last time here. Let me go ahead and pull this up. What are we thinking about Brian Daboll winning Coach of the Year? Is it a possibility? I'll say this. It's plus 2,800, which makes sense. I don't think it's very likely. But if the Giants were to draft a quarterback, and let's say that quarterback got in by about week 5, and the Giants went on a run and they were competitive and made the playoffs, then I think Brian Daboll would probably be the favorite to win Coach of the Year. Like if we're going to try and figure out what path he might have to take to get that award, I think it starts and ends with a rookie quarterback taking over and Daboll getting the credit for turning that rookie into a star from year one.
We've had this graphic on here at least one or two other times and we've discussed this, and I forgot who brought up the point. It wasn't me. I wasn't smart enough to bring up the point, but whoever it was, it might've been Bad Dog. I don't remember. They made up a really good point that every year before the year starts, you could kind of cross off 8, 9, 10 coaches who aren't winning this award because they're in such great situation. Like Nick Sirianni's not going to win the award. The Eagles go 14-3. He's not going to win the award. Andy Reid's not going to win the award. So just based off that alone, usually it's a coach like Daboll, like he won it in 2022, who's on a bad team, who surprises, and they win 9 or 10 games. So just based off that alone, if I'm a gambler, I think these are great odds. Not that I think the Giants are going to win 9 games, but it's better than a 28-1 chance, in my opinion, that they can win 8 or 9 games. And if they do, Brian Daboll is going to be one of the front runners for Coach of the Year. So just based off that theory, I actually think it's a really good bet in terms of the value. I'm not predicting he's going to win Coach of the Year, but 28-1 seems like a really good price.
Well, also think about last year with Kevin O'Connell. I mean, he won Coach of the Year bringing in Sam Darnold, right? And they had low expectations, but he was a veteran quarterback at the time. So I think that even if the Giants don't get a rookie quarterback and they bring in between Russ Wilson and Jameis Winston, if those guys get it together under his offense and end up, let's say, winning 9 games, they go 9-8 or whatever, I think you could make the argument there that, it's not as good as what the Vikings did last year. But I think you could probably make the argument too that going from 3-14 to 9-8 or whatever with some of the upgrades that they made on this team could be a fair argument.
Yeah. Not my pick, but I mean, the guy did win it 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was. So 28-1 seems like pretty good odds to me.
I agree. I don't hate the pick. My pick would be Jim Harbaugh. I think the Chargers are going to be really good this year.
That's my Super Bowl pick.
Really?
I'm the biggest Jim Harbaugh fan in the world. And year 2, I think, you look what he did with the 49ers when he got there. I mean, they were garbage for like 15 straight years. He got there. He completely changed the culture of that team. Yeah, that's my sleeper. I don't like to pick chalk. Everybody's going to pick the Chiefs. Everybody's going to pick the Bills. Yeah. I'm a big believer in Harbaugh. I think he's going to get the Chargers to another level this year. So I actually like that. If I had to predict Coach of the Year, I'm in agreement with Anthony. I think it's going to be Harbaugh. I think they win 12 or 13 games and he can win Coach of the Year.
So you're not a Michigan hater like me then, huh?
I'm not a Michigan hater. Well, I wouldn't consider myself a Michigan fan, but when Harbaugh was there, I rooted for Michigan because I'm a big Harbaugh fan.
Yeah.
And I like McCarthy. I like McCarthy too.
Yeah. I would have liked to be a fly on the wall between the Harbaugh and him and Wink didn't overlap then.
No.
Right.
It was, Wink went there the year that Harbaugh came to the NFL. Yeah.
I would have liked to see how those two.
That would have been a really interesting dynamic though with those two.
Very.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very
yeah,
much.
I like the plus 2,800 for Daboll. I think that's pretty good odds over at BetUS. Make sure you all check out BetUS, check out BetUS TV, and thank you to them for sponsoring Giants Collective and helping us power the show for you all. All right, I think it's time to go ahead and get into the live chat. We do have one super chat here from Corp CA. Appreciate you so much, Corp CA, with the big $20. Thank you very much. Saying, this being the weekend that Christ sacrificed his life for our sins, I would give my life for the Giants as long as I could see smiling faces of Giants fans and Super Bowl trophies in our hallways. Well, Corp CA, I don't think you have to sacrifice your life for the Giants to get the Super Bowl. Just trust in God's plan if we're going to flip it around on that. I think it'll happen eventually. We've seen it happen several times before. As long as we stay patient, make it through these dog days, I'm sure that the Giants will reward us one day.
Happy Easter, Corp. Don't kill yourself. That would be a hard. Giants aren't worth that, I promise. They don't care about you as much as you care about them, apparently. Don't do that. But I hope that the Giants make you smile and make all of us smile in the coming years. But happy Easter. Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, happy Easter. When I first read that, I thought it just said Chris, and I was laughing to myself like, oh, he's a big fan of Chris, like thinking, making a joke that Chris has really sacrificed all of his time in his life, like the rest of us with the Giants over here. But happy Easter. I hope you have a great weekend. And yeah, I hope that, I really think that when Thursday comes around, that at the very least, Giants fans are going to be excited and have some optimism after round one. I think I really feel like it's pretty impossible for them to mess it up. So I'm optimistic.
Yeah. Feels like a slam dunk draft. I mean, we don't know how it's going to turn out after the fact. We all thought Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal were slam dunks, but on draft night, I agree with you. We're going to be ecstatic with who we end up with.
Yeah,
I agree. I think it's going to be hard for them to mess this one up, but I won't put it past them. They are the New York Giants.
So brutal.
You never know. I do feel like we, at least since Shane's been here, at least for me, on draft night, the drafts haven't always worked out, but on draft night, I've been very happy with the results.
Yes.
But like I said, it doesn't always work out. Like in 2023, I think most Giant fans were ecstatic when they ended up with Deonte Banks as late as they did in the draft. They got JMS in the second round, and they got Jalen Hyatt, who many felt was a late first, early second round pick in the third round. So you never know until you see them on the field. But I think we'll be happy on draft night.
Yeah.
I certainly hope so. I will say, though, I think sometimes I do talk myself into the draft picks, not just with Joe Shane, but with the Dave Gettleman era as well. Like, they'll make a pick, and like Wan'Dale Robinson, for example, and he's been a pretty good player. But at the time, I was like, is that really a good choice in the second round? Seems pretty early. Most mocks had him in the fourth, but I talked myself into liking it. With that one, it worked out. I think the one that really didn't work out was Kadarius Toney. Really tried to talk myself into liking that one. A lot of that had to do with the fact that he was Tony, and my name is Tony. So I got the Tony jersey because I was like, this is perfect. It's a Rocket Tony jersey, whether he leaves the team or not. It's still cool. It's not cool. I don't wear it.
It's not cool. You better burn that right now. But no, the thing that excited me about the Tony pick more so was the trade down on draft night. Like the value we got, you were excited because you're like, oh, we just got the Bears pick. The Bears are going to be awful next year. They're going to be starting a rookie quarterback, Justin Fields. We're going to end up with a top 5, 6, 7 pick, which we did. But little did we know that Micah Parsons was going to turn into what he did. But I was excited about the trade down on draft night. I wouldn't say I was excited about the Tony pick, but the trade down I was really excited about.
Yeah. One of the things that makes me feel a little more confident in Shane is the fact that they have focused so much on like the smart part of the smart, tough, and dependable. And really like the draft picks and the players that he has brought in do not have the type of issues that some of the players that Gettleman brought in, like Tony and DeAndre Baker and Sam Beal and these guys who were just like, could not give a shit about football and had all their other stuff off the field. And Darren Waller, I think, is one thing, but I just feel like when you look at the totality of his draft picks and things like that, like we haven't heard a ton of complaints that they're falling asleep in meetings or they don't know how to read a playbook. They have no idea what's going on. Like, there's definitely been some issues and miscommunications, but I think overall, I feel a little bit better that like they're not going to go pick someone who doesn't really care that much about football or is not interested or is not going to get along with teammates, like that type of thing.
That's a good point you bring up. I mean, they really prioritize that, not just in the draft, but in the players they inherited. As soon as Kadarius Toney didn't play a snap for Brian Daboll, they saw him. They saw him their first training camp. They're like, we got to get rid of this guy. So yeah, you're right. They do certainly prioritize, I think, good culture guys. And a lot of people were worried about Neighbors. I think he's great for the culture. I think he's a win now guy. He's all about the team. But he speaks his mind, but I think he's himself. There's sometimes like Kadarius Toney, he was just a jerk when he spoke to the media. He was, but Neighbors is in your face, but I think he does it in an appropriate manner. And Kayvon Thibodeau, same thing. I think a lot of people were talking about his character issues when he came in. There's times where he does a little bit more than I'd like, but overall, I think he's pretty good when it comes to the media too. I think, I agree with you. I think Shane's has actually done a really good job from that aspect of it, getting good culture players for the New York Giants.
Well, and he talked about that too in his presser that earlier this week, saying that like they really focus on the smart and intelligence aspect of it because they want guys who can learn the playbook and who can adapt and things like that. So when I heard that Jalen Milroe was all academic, him and there was another player who also, I forgot who it was an all academic guy, that I'm like, these are Joe Shane's type of guys, because he knows that they're going to be able to learn this really challenging playbook that Daboll has, and they're going to be able to get into this offense and, from day one, kind of be able to figure it out, especially at the quarterback position.
I didn't hear the first name you said. Maybe I missed it. Okereke is a really smart guy. Yeah, he went to Stanford. Really smart. He's one of the. I remember reading an article when we signed him. He was known as one of the more intelligent players in the NFL. So that was a really good point you brought up. That he's really prioritized the smart part of the smart, tough, and dependables for sure since he's been here.
Yeah, we had Okereke on Fireside Giants the offseason that he signed with the team, and he blew us away. He was just super smart, very well spoken, super respectful, was talking about the business ventures that he's starting as well. He had a black car business down in South Florida that he was putting together. A really smart guy. The Stanford education was shining through with every word. He was really, really cool.
Yeah. I remember reading several things about him that people raved about his intelligence. John says, what's the plan with Hyatt? We'll get to that in a second. Anthony, go ahead and say what you're going to say.
Yeah. Well, we can get to that, because what I was going to say is kind of like, I wouldn't call it silly, but my friend who said it was silly. But I haven't heard anybody bring this up yet. So I've heard a lot of Giants fans say, why should they take Sanders at 3? If they didn't take McCarthy last year, McCarthy is a better prospect, right? That's been the consensus kind of opinion from Giants fans who don't think they should take Shedeur Sanders. I had a buddy of mine who is a Cowboys fan. Let me preface it that way. So he's not the smartest guy. But he kind of said something similar, but about Abdul Carter, essentially saying he doesn't think Abdul Carter is worth the number 3 overall pick because Micah Parsons went 11 and the Giants passed on him there. Obviously, it was a different regime, but Micah Parsons went 11 and Parsons was a better prospect, which I do agree with. I think Parsons was a better prospect.
Apples and oranges, though, Anthony. It's apples and oranges. That draft class, you had elite wide receiver prospects. You had Devontae Smith.
Yeah.
You had what's his name? Jamar Chase. That was a much better overall draft class. Penei Sewell was an elite tackle prospect. And there were good quarterbacks, or supposedly good quarterbacks in that draft, good quarterback prospects in that draft. So I just think it's apples and oranges. I think they're comparable prospects, but every draft class is different, man.
But wasn't he also, his stock kind of tanked closer to the draft because of character
issues, right? As well? Yeah.
I don't know what happened, but I remember that being a big thing. So I wonder if he was projected to go earlier, and if it wasn't for that, he would have gotten moved down. But I think it's hard to compare because, like you said, back in that draft, there were so many other prospects who seemed to be like light years ahead of certain different players. And I think when you look at this class, like Abdul Carter is significantly better than some of the other guys like Will Campbell and the other ones who are probably going to go the second half of the top 10. So I think that that's a big part of it too. Plus, you don't have 3 other quarterbacks who are that good in this year's draft. It's Cam Ward and then Shedeur Sanders. And, I think Sanders is probably going to end up going closer to 10 than closer to 5.
That's what it feels like now. Yeah. That's what it feels like now. But we'll see. You never know, though, on draft night. That's what makes it fun, He's the most unpredictable guy going into this draft. I think he could go as high as 3, even though I don't think we're taking him. And he could go as low as the back end of the first round at this point. So he's a wild card.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. We do have a super chat, but you did mention John's comment before we get to that super chat. So I'll bring that one up and take the borders off of our faces. But John asking, what's the plan with Hyatt? Is he staying now that we have a QB who has moonball throws? I'll say this. I think that the notion of trading away Jalen Hyatt is a little silly because the Giants finally, first of all, what's he worth? I'm not sure it's a whole lot. Second of all, I like depth at the playmaker positions. We've seen a lot of wide receiver injuries on the New York Giants. Even last year, we had some injuries when Malik Neighbors missed a couple games with a concussion, and Darius Slayton has been injured in the past. Wandale has been injured at times in the past. I think the Giants should be adding depth to this wide receiver room, and I think at the very least, Jalen Hyatt is a good depth piece with some speed. Maybe he develops into something more. It's totally possible. I'm not going to discount him, but I just don't want to see the Giants take whatever depth pieces they have and trade them away for pennies on the dollar.
He's not worth anything at this point. You might get a 6th-round pick for him. He's not worth anything at this point. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think you keep him on the team, and we'll see if he even makes the team. I'm predicting he will, but I don't think it's a lock. The Giants may draft their wide receiver in this class, say late day 2. They brought in a lot. We've talked about that. They brought in a lot of wide receivers in free agency. I think he will make the team, but it's not a lock. But I'm not for trading the guy because you're not going to get anything for him. And maybe with Russell Wilson, who is known for the moon ball, he throws a very high, deep ball. That's always been his MO. It gives Jalen Hyatt, one of the fastest guys in the NFL, an opportunity to get under it. Maybe he develops more of a role with a quarterback that's better suited for his skill set. So, we'll see. I don't think he's going to start. They paid Darius Slayton for a reason. They clearly don't believe in Hyatt at this point. Otherwise, Darius Slayton wouldn't have been brought back. I think that was the initial plan when they drafted Hyatt, to replace Slayton with him. It hasn't worked out thus far. But you can't get anything for the guy at this point. So you might as well keep him and hope he could develop into more.
Yeah, I think you got to keep him just for the depth aspect at this point and just to see what he's capable of doing in camp. Even if he's with the 2s and Jameis Winston is going to give him the opportunity to catch a deep ball here and there too, at least throughout camp and probably preseason. So I think it's worth just keeping him for now and seeing what happens. If they draft another wide receiver, which I think they probably will at some point, then again, you just have more depth there. We always deal with injuries every single year. So the more the merrier from the wide receiver angle. And, you guys talked about his speed. That is one of his strengths that we just haven't really been able to see yet. And he did put on some weight this offseason. So I know that was one of the complaints too, that he was pretty slight. So I think I saw that he put on like 10 pounds. So we'll see if that, I hope it doesn't affect his speed, but we'll see if that makes any difference for him this year.
Yeah.
Well, he's definitely had some trouble fighting through contact. So I think he could afford to add some extra muscle to his frame.
True. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. All right, we do have the super chat here from John Kirk. Thank you, John, saying, I am concerned we are going to overpay for a quarterback coming back into round 1 and a potential trade up. Could cost $34.65 and a 2026 pick. Would rather just pick a quarterback at 34. Thoughts? I think it depends how high up they're moving into the first round to get this quarterback. Because if they're only moving up, if they're planning on taking a quarterback at 34, you might as well get to 32 if you're certain he's going to fall, just so you can get the 5th-year option. I do think it's worth giving up a
on that, but I want
round pick.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting conversation about the 5th-year option, but go ahead.
Yeah, I just don't think it's going to cost a whole lot to move up to 2 spots. I think that's a day 3 selection, maybe 2 day 3 selections, but I don't think it's anything premium. Now, if they're trying to get into pick 15 to steal Shedeur Sanders, yeah, maybe they're giving up one of their 3rd-round picks and maybe a future 3rd-round pick, or maybe even greater than that. I don't know. It depends if there's a bidding war for Shedeur on draft night. But I don't think it's going to cost a whole lot just to get into the very back of the first round and go ahead and take a quarterback there for the 5th-year option. So it's something that I'm interested in. I'm just not convinced that the Giants are going to go quarterback at 34 or the back end of the first round, because I think if they really like a guy and they want to take him, they do it at 3. So if they're not going to do it there, I think they're going to wait for somebody more developmental later on, although it is definitely a possibility they try and get into the back end of the first round.
I saw your buddy Alex today on Twitter bring up that exact point for trading up for Milroe so you could get the possibility of the fifth-year option. I think Bad Dogs brought up that point as well. I guess I don't value it as much as you guys do. I get it because it's an option, but the way that I look at it is if Milroe's a good quarterback by year 3, you're going to extend him anyway. And he's probably not going to, and if he's bad the first 4 years, you're not going to extend him on the fifth-year option anyway. So I don't put as much stock into that as you guys do, the fifth-year option. If they trade up, it means because they feel like he's worthy of the pick. I don't think they're going to trade up to guarantee themselves the fifth-year option. That's an added bonus, though. I'm not saying I get the logic, obviously, to have that in your back pocket as a general manager. It could even help in leverage in terms of negotiations if you extend him on the fifth-year option, and then it could potentially lower his contract demands. But I'm not in love with the idea of trading up for a quarterback in this draft. The only guy I'd be okay with is Shador, to be honest with you. We just talked about it. Jalen Milroe, we all did. Jalen Milroe dropped to us at 65 on our last mock draft. He's the guy that everybody's talking about trading up for that I've seen on Twitter. We didn't even take him in the third round. So the only guy that I would even be slightly okay with as a Giants fan is Shador. But my mindset is what Anthony just said, and it's been that way all along. If you don't like Shador enough to take at 3, well, then you're probably not going to like him enough to trade up and give up that kind of draft capital to jump up to 15 or 16. I think the only way that they would trade up for Shador is if he got past the Steelers and maybe trickle down into the 25, 26, 27 range, and they want to assure that the Browns don't get him before they do. I don't think they're going to jump up to the middle of the first round to get a quarterback when they have the ability to take one at 3. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I think, Joe has talked so much about value that I just am not sold on him being willing to give up so much to move back into the first for Shador. And again, like Anthony said, it depends on how far we're talking about. Like if we're talking about moving from 34 to 15, I think at some point you have to be like, this team is not a quarterback away. And, maybe as much as we love Shador, it's not worth giving away all of these draft picks for him when, we obviously have a lot of other holes to fill. We could get a good offensive lineman, defensive tackle, running back, whoever it is with those picks. So I would be surprised if they do that. I agree that I would rather just see them pick a quarterback at 34 if they felt like they really needed a quarterback. But he just really, I don't know how much to take it with a grain of salt, but he seems really sold on the fact that they're in a good spot with the quarterback position and they're not going to force it if the value's not there.
I think he's wrong, but I agree. I think that's what he thinks. But I hope Anthony's right. I hope Russell Wilson is really good for the Giants this year, and we have an opportunity to build from there. And I hope that's what happens. I'm not as high on Russ as Anthony is.
But it was the same thing the last 2 years, right? Like Joe made the final decision. And I really think that this caused a problem between him and Daboll during the season last year is the last 2 years, Shane was the one who made the final decision on those quarterback rooms. And I think that Daboll wanted someone else. Maybe he wanted JJ McCarthy at 6. We know he loved Neighbors. Maybe he wanted a quarterback at some other point last year. And they decided again, Shane said, no, this is what we're doing, whatever. And we saw it with the way that Daboll interacted with Jones, the way that he threw Drew Lock under the bus, talking about his interceptions and how it's unacceptable during press conferences and things like that. And I just think that he didn't love the quarterback rooms. And Joe was like, I make the final decision. Like, this is what we're doing. So I don't know. I think he probably feels again, like we're good with our quarterbacks. I'm not sold on Shador at 3. I want Abdul Carter. This is what we're doing.
That's what it feels like. It really does. Like, for as desperate as they are to take the court, to have a franchise quarterback on this roster, if they pass someone at 3 and everybody's saying that this is, even Joe Shane kind of like, I feel like he kind of like, he said it without saying it in his press conference. He didn't show a lot of confidence in the quarterback class. When he was asked to describe the quarterback class, he said, it's a deep class. Like that, to me, that's like saying, you can get value. You get guys in the round 4, round 5, round 6. He didn't really speak highly of any, not that he's going to give away his draft secrets, but he said it was a deep class. He didn't mention that there's tremendous prospects at the top of the draft at that position. I really feel the way I'm reading what Shane is saying, I'd be stunned. Not stunned. I don't want to use the word stunned, but very surprised if they take a quarterback before, say, pick 99. I really don't think they're going quarterback early in this draft at this point. I think he's going to try to make it do with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston for a year as he continues to build up the roster. And it may end up being a great decision if Abdul Carter works out, defensive tackle works out, and next year you're in a prime position to bring in a quarterback. So we'll see.
Yeah, I do think the biggest tell that the Giants aren't in love with Shedeur Sanders was the Matthew Stafford rumors. It really felt like they wanted to avoid drafting a quarterback when they pushed so hard to trade for Matthew Stafford. I mean, the fact that they were willing to give him $100 million across 2 years plus whatever draft compensation the Rams asked for, Rich Eisen reported that they checked the box on that. So assuming it was at least a second round pick and more, the Giants were willing to give up a lot for Stafford. And I don't really view that as much as they felt like Stafford would make them Super Bowl contenders overnight. I view that as they don't believe in the quarterbacks in this year's draft, so they always knew they were going the veteran route, and they wanted to get the best veteran possible. And now they've settled, of course, on Russell Wilson as their next best option. But I think they just really don't have a lot of faith in this quarterback class.
Yeah, it feels like now that we've seen it all play out, it feels like the plan with Stafford. Not that I'm comparing him to Daniel Jones. He's better. Obviously, he's going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. But the plan with Stafford, I think, was similar to Jones in the sense that he was going to use him as a 2-year bridge to continue to build the team and give him satisfactory quarterback play while he continues to build the team. I think that was his plan. That was his plan A. He was hoping to get a Kerry Collins-like transition for 2-3 years with a guy like Matt Stafford as he continues to build the team before he gets a franchise quarterback. That's what it feels like now.
Yeah, and if you do that, you're not picking Sanders to have him sit for 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like I say, I think that they're trying to go the Kansas City Chiefs route where they get their Alex Smith for a year or two, and then they try and trade up, sell the farm, and get their quarterback whenever they think it's the time, like the Chiefs did with Mahomes. So we'll see how it goes, of course. But another full hour here on the Giants Collective. A really great show. It was a lot of fun doing the mock draft. I'm sure we'll probably do another one next week, or at least discuss something on Wednesday relating to mock drafts. And then I think we're going to do something on Friday as well following the Giants picks, or maybe Saturday. I don't know which
we'll
way
figure
we
it
have
out.
this
Yeah,
planned.
we'll discuss. Friday's going to end late, right? Like Friday's like midnight, right? Like it's late.
Yeah, maybe we'll do Saturday. I don't know. We'll figure it out though.
Yeah, maybe Saturday. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll definitely have something going for you guys here on the Giants Collective next week as we officially enter draft week, which is really one of my favorite weeks of the year in the NFL. I love the draft. I think it's so much fun. It's like reality TV, but football, There's just, you never know what's going to happen.
I love the draft, Anthony, but I long for the days where I don't care too much about the draft, where the Giants are so good where you're picking 27, 28, 29, and you're like, all right, let's add another nice little piece to fill out this roster, not have to find a superstar every year because we're lacking in talent. I long for those days, but I agree with you. Yeah. I'm excited about the draft because we need all the help we could get.
Yeah. We'll get back there at some point. It's coming.
At some point. Hopefully nobody sacrifices themselves to get us back there. I think we
should all just, please.
Yeah, don't do that. It's not worth it.
Something like that always comes back to bite you. If you watch any of those movies where they do human sacrifice, they might get their short-term rewards, but long-term, it's going to come back to bite you. So nobody do that, please. Let's all be happy Giants fans.
It's not really
together.
Sacrifices, Anthony. I know you're a movie guy. What's the name of that vampire movie that came out today? It looks fantastic. With
Sinners looks really good. I got my ticket. I'm gonna go see it tomorrow night. I'm excited for that one.
It got like 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm gonna have to check it out.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm thrilled.
Yeah.
I gotta go watch the trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looks cool. But all right, I guess we'll go ahead and get out of here. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. We will be live once again next week, so stay tuned to all of our social media channels. We'll announce when we're going live, and make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy. If you are watching the live stream replay, make sure to comment your thoughts down below, and definitely leave us questions that we can bring up in future installments of Giants Collective. And if you're new, make sure to subscribe, ring the bell if you're not new and you want to make sure that you know whenever we're going live. We'll notify you that way. And until then, we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Have a good night, guys.
Happy Easter.
Yeah, happy Easter.
Happy Easter.